You wake up in September 1347, and your medieval kitchen is facing the most terrifying deadline in human history: winter. In 6 months, every fresh thing you can see will be dead, frozen, or completely unavailable until spring. Your family's survival literally depends on your ability to turn this autumn abundance into food that won't kill you in February. No electric refrigerator humming in the corner, no freezer compartment stocked with frozen meals, no grocery store down the road where you can buy fresh produce shipped from thousands of miles away. Just you, your medieval kitchen, and the absolute necessity of keeping your family fed through the longest, darkest, hungriest months of the year. But here's the thing. You're about to master food preservation techniques so effective that some of them are still used today. Medieval people didn't have modern technology, but they had something arguably more valuable: centuries of trial and error knowledge about how to transform fresh food into shelf-stable nutrition using nothing but salt, smoke, time, and human ingenuity. Welcome to the most crucial life skill of the Middle Ages. Time to learn how your ancestors turned autumn's plenty into winter survival, one preserved meal at a time. Chapter 1. The Salt Revolution. You are standing in your medieval kitchen, holding a handful of precious white crystals that represent the difference between life and death. Salt isn't just seasoning in your world, it's survival technology, currency, and the foundation of every food preservation technique you'll master. Roman soldiers were literally paid in salt, giving us the word salary, and now you understand why. This isn't the refined table salt of modern times. Your salt comes in different varieties, each with its own purpose. Sea salt from coastal areas arrives gray and chunky, full of minerals that add flavor and preservation power. Rock salt from inland deposits is whiter but coarser. The finest, whitest salt is reserved for your lord's table. You get the rougher stuff, but it works just as well for keeping your family alive. The science behind salt preservation is brutally simple. Bacteria and other microorganisms need moisture to survive, and salt sucks water out of everything it touches. When you pack meat in salt, you're essentially mummifying it, creating an environment so hostile to decay that your preserved pork will stay edible for months. Different cuts of meat require different salting techniques. Thin cuts like bacon get dry rubbed with salt and spices, then hung to cure. Thick cuts like hams need complete burial in salt for weeks. You've learned that the salt must penetrate completely to the center of the meat, or the unsalted core will rot while the outside appears perfectly preserved. Your first major preservation project is the autumn pig slaughter. Every medieval household that can afford it raises a pig through the summer, feeding it scraps and letting it grow fat. When the first hard frost comes, it's slaughter time. You can't keep a pig alive through winter. There's not enough food, so the entire animal must be preserved immediately. You start with the hams, the most valuable cuts. These massive pieces of meat get the full salt treatment, completely buried in coarse salt for several weeks. You create a salt box in your cellar, literally packing each ham in salt until it's completely covered. The salt draws out moisture, turning the meat a deep red color and creating a hostile environment for bacteria. But you can't waste anything. Every scrap of this pig must be preserved somehow. The belly becomes bacon, rubbed with salt and hung in your smokehouse. Smaller cuts get chopped and mixed with salt and spices to make sausages that will keep for months. Even the blood gets preserved, mixed with grain and spices to make blood pudding that provides crucial protein through the lean winter months. The salt curing process requires patience and skill that modern people rarely understand. Too little salt and the meat rots. Too much salt and it becomes inedibly salty, though even over-salted meat can be soaked and cooked to make it palatable. You learn to judge by touch and appearance when the curing is complete, skills passed down through generations of medieval cooks. The economics of salt reflect its crucial importance. A pound of salt might cost a day's wages for a peasant, making it precious as silver. You use every grain carefully, measuring amounts that will preserve food without waste. The salt you scrape off finished hams gets reused for the next batch, recycled until it's too contaminated to be effective. Your salt-preserved meat develops flavors that fresh meat never could. The curing process concentrates the taste while creating new flavor compounds. That Christmas ham your great-great-grandchildren will remember? It tastes like that because of the salt curing techniques you're mastering right now. Your salt preservation isn't limited to meat. You're also salt curing fish, packing catches in salt to create the stockfish that will provide protein all winter. The process is particularly crucial for herring, which arrives in massive seasonal runs that must be preserved immediately or lost forever. You gut and clean the fish quickly, then pack them in alternating layers of salt and fish in wooden barrels. The salt draws moisture from the fish while preventing the bacterial growth that causes spoilage. Within weeks, the herring transforms from soft, perishable flesh into firm, shelf-stable protein that can be stored for months. This preserved fish becomes so valuable that it drives international trade. Properly salt-cured herring from the North Sea reaches markets as far away as Constantinople. Vegetables get the salt treatment too. Cabbage becomes sauerkraut through a combination of salting and fermentation. Beans get salt-packed for storage. And even cheese relies on salt for both flavor and preservation. You use salt as both a preservative and a tool for controlling fermentation, understanding through experience how different salt concentrations produce different results. Salt preservation fundamentally changes your relationship with time. Fresh meat must be eaten within days. Salt-cured meat can last months or even years. You're not just preserving food, you're creating food security, transforming the feast or famine cycle of agricultural life into a steady supply of nutrition. Chapter 2. Masters of Smoke and Fire. You are standing beside your medieval smokehouse, watching ribbons of aromatic smoke curl around strips of meat that will feed your family through winter. This isn't just cooking. This is food preservation elevated to an art form, using techniques that create flavors so distinctive they'll define regional cuisines for centuries. Your smokehouse is a simple but ingenious structure, a small building with racks for hanging meat and a carefully controlled fire pit that produces more smoke than flame. The key is maintaining a low, steady smoke that slowly dehydrates the meat while depositing antimicrobial compounds that prevent spoilage. The choice of wood determines the final flavor. Apple wood creates sweet, mild smoke perfect for pork. Oak provides strong, earthy flavors ideal for beef. Cherry wood adds a subtle fruity note and gives meat an appealing reddish color. You've learned through experience which woods to avoid. Pine and other resinous trees create bitter, unpalatable smoke that ruins the meat. Your smoking process begins with salt curing. The meat gets a thorough coating of salt, sometimes mixed with herbs and spices, then hangs for several days to begin the preservation process. The salt draws out moisture and begins the chemical changes that will turn fresh meat into shelf-stable food. Once salt cured, the meat goes into the smokehouse for the real transformation. This isn't a quick process. Proper smoking takes days or even weeks depending on the size and type of meat. You maintain a fire that's more smolder than blaze, feeding it carefully selected wood chips and monitoring the smoke production constantly. The smoke does more than just add flavor. The chemical compounds in wood smoke, particularly phenols, have natural antimicrobial properties that actively prevent bacterial growth. You're essentially painting your meat with nature's preservatives, creating multiple layers of protection against spoilage. The smoking process creates a protective shell on the outside of the meat while slowly dehydrating the interior. This dual action, surface protection and moisture removal, makes smoked meat incredibly durable. A properly smoked ham can hang in your kitchen for months without refrigeration, gradually developing more complex flavors as it ages. Your smoking schedule follows natural rhythms. Cold autumn mornings provide ideal conditions for smoking when the air is crisp and flies are dormant. You rise before dawn to tend the fires, maintaining the delicate balance of heat and smoke that transforms raw meat into preserved food. Different meats require different smoking techniques. Fish, being more delicate, needs shorter smoking times and lighter smoke. Cod becomes the famous stockfish when properly smoked and dried, a protein source so valuable it drives international trade. Pork receives the most elaborate smoking treatment. Bacon strips hang in your smokehouse for weeks, slowly transforming from raw belly meat into the smoky, shelf-stable strips that will flavor countless winter meals. Your smoking techniques create regional specialties that will become legendary. The specific combination of local wood, climate, and traditional methods produces distinctive flavors that can't be replicated elsewhere. German speck, Italian prosciutto, Spanish jamon, all descendants of medieval smoking techniques like the ones you're mastering. By spring, your smokehouse will have transformed hundreds of pounds of fresh meat into preserved food that tastes better than anything possible with fresh ingredients. You haven't just prevented spoilage, you've created entirely new foods, flavors that exist only because of the smoking process. Chapter 3. Underground Refrigeration. You are standing at the entrance to your medieval root cellar, looking down into what amounts to nature's refrigerator. This underground chamber represents the most sophisticated climate control technology available to medieval people. A precisely engineered environment that keeps vegetables fresh for months, using nothing but the Earth's natural properties. Your root cellar isn't just a hole in the ground, it's a carefully designed structure that takes advantage of the Earth's constant temperature and high humidity to create ideal storage conditions. Dug at least 4 feet deep, below the frost line, your cellar maintains a steady temperature between 32 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, cold enough to slow spoilage, warm enough to prevent freezing. The construction requires skills that modern people have forgotten. Stone or timber walls provide structure while allowing some moisture exchange. The floor remains packed earth, which naturally maintains the high humidity levels your stored vegetables need to prevent withering. A thick layer of sod on top provides insulation while allowing the structure to breathe. Ventilation is crucial but tricky. You need enough air circulation to prevent mold growth, but not so much that your carefully controlled environment is compromised. Small gaps between stones or strategically placed wooden vents allow air exchange while maintaining the stable conditions your vegetables require. The root cellar's design takes advantage of physics you don't fully understand but have learned to exploit. The Earth's thermal mass moderates temperature swings, while the underground location protects against freezing. The high humidity prevents vegetables from drying out, while the consistent cool temperature slows the biological processes that cause spoilage. Your root cellar becomes a precisely organized storage system where different vegetables have specific requirements and locations. Potatoes get stored in complete darkness to prevent greening, buried in slightly damp sand or sawdust. Carrots and parsnips stay crisp when packed in barely moist sand. Apples require special handling. They produce ethylene gas that can cause other stored foods to spoil quickly, so you store them separately. The organization of your cellar reflects sophisticated understanding of plant biology and food chemistry. Root vegetables with high water content go in the dampest areas, while drier goods stay in areas with better air circulation. You create different zones within the same space, each optimized for specific types of produce. Beets and turnips get layered in boxes with sand between each layer, preventing them from touching and transferring moisture or spoilage. Cabbages are stored whole with their outer leaves intact to provide natural protection. These outer leaves act as nature's packaging, protecting the inner leaves from drying out and contamination. Storage containers matter as much as location. Wooden boxes allow air circulation, while wicker baskets provide good drainage. Clay pots maintain consistent moisture levels for certain vegetables. You've learned through experience which containers work best for different foods, knowledge that represents generations of trial and error. Cabbages get stored whole with their outer leaves intact to provide natural protection. Onions and garlic hang in braids from the ceiling, their papery skins protecting them from moisture. Turnips, beets, and other root vegetables go into boxes of sand, where they'll stay fresh until spring. The timing of harvest and storage requires sophisticated understanding of plant biology. You've learned to harvest root vegetables after the first light frost, when their starches have converted to sugars, improving both flavor and storage life. Late harvested vegetables store better than those picked too early. Your cellar doubles as a food processing center. This is where you prepare vegetables for long-term storage, cleaning off soil but leaving protective skins intact. You sort carefully, setting aside any damaged vegetables for immediate use while selecting only perfect specimens for extended storage. The success of your root cellar depends on constant monitoring and maintenance. You check stored vegetables regularly, removing any that show signs of spoilage before they can contaminate others. Your underground system preserves vegetables with flavors and nutritional content that mechanical cooling can't match. Chapter 4. The Alchemy of Fermentation. You are witnessing one of humanity's oldest and most mysterious food preservation techniques as beneficial bacteria transform your summer vegetables into tangy, shelf-stable nutrition that will last through winter. Fermentation isn't just preservation, it's culinary alchemy that creates entirely new flavors while making food more nutritious and digestible. Your fermentation vessels line the cool corners of your kitchen, large ceramic crocks filled with vegetables slowly transforming under the power of beneficial microorganisms. You don't understand the science. Germ theory won't be discovered for centuries, but you've mastered the practical techniques that harness invisible forces to preserve your food. The process begins with cabbage, your most important fermentation project. Fresh heads get shredded with sharp knives, then layered in crocks with coarse salt. You work the salt into the cabbage with your hands, breaking down cell walls and drawing out the natural juices that will become the fermentation medium. Salt serves multiple crucial functions in fermentation. It draws water from the vegetables, creating the brine environment necessary for fermentation. It also selectively encourages beneficial bacteria while inhibiting harmful microorganisms. The salt concentration must be precise. Too little allows dangerous bacteria to flourish, too much prevents fermentation entirely. Within days, beneficial bacteria naturally present on the vegetables, start converting sugars into lactic acid, creating the tangy flavor and acidic environment that preserves the food. The vegetables slowly change color, developing the characteristic sour smell that tells you fermentation is working properly. You monitor the fermentation carefully, watching for signs that the process is proceeding correctly. Properly fermenting vegetables develop a pleasant sour aroma and gradually change color. The brine becomes cloudy as beneficial bacteria multiply, and tiny bubbles indicate active fermentation. Bad fermentation smells rotten and produces slimy textures. These batches must be discarded immediately. The fermentation process follows a predictable timeline. The first few days see rapid bacterial growth and the development of sourness. After a week, the fermentation slows but continues developing complex flavors. After several weeks, the vegetables reach their peak flavor and can be stored for months in the cool conditions of your cellar. Your sauerkraut isn't the only fermentation project. Turnips, carrots, and other vegetables get similar treatment, each developing its own unique flavor profile. Dairy products undergo their own fermentation transformation. Fresh milk becomes cheese through controlled bacterial action, turning a highly perishable liquid into solid food that can last for months. Grain fermentation produces ale, your household's primary beverage and crucial source of calories. Malted barley provides the sugars, while naturally occurring yeasts convert those sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide. The fermentation process not only preserves the grain-based nutrition, but also creates a mildly alcoholic beverage that's safer to drink than water. Your fermented foods develop complex flavors impossible to achieve through other preservation methods. The slow bacterial transformation creates layers of taste that enhance simple ingredients, turning basic cabbage into a complex, flavorful food that complements preserved meats and adds interest to monotonous winter diets. Timing is crucial in fermentation. You must harvest vegetables at peak ripeness, when their sugar content is highest, and they'll ferment most successfully. The fermentation process itself requires patience. Rushing leads to poorly preserved food that may spoil rather than age properly. By spring, your fermented vegetables will have provided essential nutrition and flavor variety that made winter survival not just possible, but palatable. You haven't just preserved food, you've transformed it into something better than the original ingredients. Chapter 5. Sweet Preservation and Perfect Integration. You are standing beside your medieval honey stores, holding jars of liquid gold that represent one of nature's most perfect preservation systems. Honey isn't just sweetener in your world, it's a preservation medium so effective that honey found in Egyptian tombs is still edible after thousands of years. Your honey preservation begins with fruit selection. Only perfect specimens get the honey treatment. Any bruised or damaged fruit will spoil despite the honey's preservative power. You choose the ripest, most flavorful fruits, knowing that honey will enhance rather than mask their natural sweetness. Your preservation process involves whole fruits packed in pure honey within sealed ceramic containers. The honey creates an anaerobic environment that prevents spoilage while slowly infusing the fruit with sweetness. These honey-preserved fruits will remain edible for years, becoming more concentrated and flavorful with time. But you can't afford to use pure honey for everything. It's too precious. Instead, you create honey syrups by heating honey with water, creating preservation mediums that stretch your honey stores while still providing preservation power. Your most sophisticated honey preservation creates what amount to medieval candies, fruits cooked slowly in honey syrup until the moisture evaporates and the natural sugars concentrate. The result is fruit leather, or candied fruit that's incredibly durable and packed with concentrated nutrition. These treats provide quick energy during hard winter work and represent luxury in a world where sweetness is rare and precious. Honey preservation works through multiple mechanisms. Honey's low water content draws moisture from fruit, preventing bacterial growth. Its natural acidity creates an environment hostile to spoilage organisms. Most importantly, honey contains natural antimicrobial compounds that actively fight contamination. The honey acts as both preservative and flavor enhancer, creating foods that are often more delicious than their fresh counterparts. Your honey preservation extends beyond simple fruit storage. You're creating medicines using honey's preservative power to store medicinal herbs and preparations. Honey-based remedies stay potent far longer than fresh herbal preparations, giving you access to healing compounds throughout the winter when fresh herbs aren't available. Now you're managing a medieval food preservation system so sophisticated it would impress modern food scientists. Your preservation techniques work together in combinations that maximize food security. Salt-cured meats hang in your smokehouse, developing flavors that will make winter meals palatable. Root vegetables rest in your underground cellar. Fermented vegetables provide essential vitamins, while honey-preserved fruits deliver concentrated energy. The seasonal rhythm of your preservation work reflects the brutal realities of medieval agriculture. Summer abundance must be transformed into winter survival, and you have perhaps 3 months to preserve enough food to last 6 months. There's no second chance. Failure means starvation, and the techniques you use have been tested by the ultimate standard of keeping families alive. Quality control in your system requires skills that modern people have forgotten. You must judge by sight, smell, and touch whether preserved foods remain safe to eat. A piece of salt pork that's developed the wrong color or smell could kill your family, so you've learned to recognize the subtle signs of successful preservation versus dangerous spoilage. Your preservation system creates a medieval food economy where different families specialize in different techniques. Your neighbor might excel at cheese making while you've mastered meat smoking. Trading preserved foods allows everyone to access a more varied diet while spreading the risk of preservation failure across the community. Your preservation calendar governs the rhythm of medieval life. September means slaughtering animals that can't survive winter. October brings the final vegetable harvests and root storage. November sees the completion of smoking and salt curing projects. By December, your preservation work is largely complete. Food safety in your preservation system relies on techniques that prevent contamination rather than treating it after it occurs. Clean tools, proper timing, correct salt concentrations, and careful monitoring prevent the conditions that allow dangerous bacteria to flourish. Epilogue. Legacy in every bite. You are an old woman now, teaching your granddaughter the preservation techniques that have kept your family alive through 40 winters. She watches as you pack this year's sauerkraut, learning the precise balance of salt and cabbage that creates perfect fermentation. In your weathered hands are techniques that stretch back to the beginning of human civilization. Your preservation skills have created more than just food security. They've shaped the very foundations of civilization. The ability to store surplus food allowed human societies to develop beyond simple hunter-gatherer communities. Your root cellar and smokehouse are direct descendants of the storage technologies that made permanent settlements possible. The foods you've preserved have become the backbone of regional cuisines that will persist for centuries. Your smoked ham and fermented cabbage techniques will evolve into the distinctive flavors that define national cuisines. German sauerkraut, Italian prosciutto, Spanish chamois, all trace their origins to preservation techniques like the ones you've spent your life perfecting. Your knowledge represents a kind of practical science that modern people have largely forgotten. You understand microbiology through observation and experience, mastering bacterial cultures and fermentation without knowing what bacteria are. Your food safety practices prevent contamination through techniques that work better than many modern methods. The seasonal rhythm of preservation work has shaped not just your family's diet, but your entire worldview. You think in terms of cycles, abundance and scarcity, preservation and consumption, preparation and survival. These rhythms connect you to natural cycles that modern people, with their year-round fresh food, no longer experience. Your preservation techniques have created flavors that exist nowhere else in nature. Fermentation produces tastes that are impossible with fresh ingredients. Smoking develops flavor compounds that can only be created through the interaction of wood smoke and time. Honey preservation creates sweetness concentrations that intensify natural fruit flavors beyond anything possible without preservation. The tools you've used throughout your preservation career are masterpieces of specialized design. Your wooden barrels, ceramic crocks, and smoking equipment represent thousands of years of refinement to create optimal preservation conditions. These tools work so well that many remain virtually unchanged in traditional preservation today. Your food preservation has created a kind of medieval food security that provided stability in an uncertain world. While fresh food was available only seasonally, preserved food provided reliable nutrition year-round. Your preservation skills transformed the feast or famine cycle of agricultural life into steady sustenance that allowed your family not just to survive, but to thrive. Your preservation knowledge has literally been a matter of life and death. Families that failed to master these techniques starved during bad winters. The methods you've learned exist because they worked. They're tested by the ultimate standard of keeping people alive through the most challenging conditions. Modern refrigeration may have made many of your techniques unnecessary, but the flavors and nutritional benefits you've created through preservation can't be replicated by simple cooling. Your fermented vegetables are more nutritious than fresh ones. Your smoked meats have flavors impossible to achieve any other way. Your granddaughter will carry these techniques into a world where they're no longer necessary for survival, but she'll discover that they're still valuable for flavor, nutrition, and connection to the past. The preservation knowledge you're teaching her represents an unbroken chain of human ingenuity stretching back to the beginning of civilization. As you watch her work the salt into fresh cabbage, preparing this year's sauerkraut, you see the continuation of techniques that have fed humanity through its darkest winters. She may never need these skills for survival, but she'll use them for pleasure, creating the traditional flavors that connect her to generations of ancestors who preserved food, not by choice, but by necessity. Your life's work in food preservation represents the triumph of human ingenuity over the challenges of nature. Without electricity, without understanding of science, without modern tools, you've mastered techniques that kept families alive and created flavors that will endure for centuries. The preservation knowledge you've accumulated represents one of humanity's oldest and most successful technologies. The transformation of abundance into security, of fresh food into lasting sustenance, of seasonal plenty into year-round survival. In every bite of preserved food, your legacy continues.